Welcome back, everybody, to another segment of Super Tuesday on the Educational 80 podcast. We'll be right back with today's Super Tuesday guest, but we want to give a shout out to our sponsors. Now, these are all great companies that I used when I was an athletic director. So take the next couple of minutes, don't fast forward, listen to our shout outs, then listen to our Super Tuesday guest, and then go and visit the sponsors if you're not already using them. I'm telling you, you're going to be very glad you did. Here we go. We want to thank our good friends at SnapRaise for their support. Have you ever spent weeks and weeks with a fundraiser and then been disappointed in the results? Those days are gone. Go to snapraise.com. It's hands down the best online fundraiser out there. We used it at our school with great success. Our coaches loved it. Our parents loved it because it works. Go to snapraise.com. You can check out their other great platforms. But if you're looking for a fundraiser, you just found it. Go to snapraise.com. We'd like to thank Sideline Interactive, indoor score tables and video boards. Go to sidelineinteractive.com. You can schedule a live web demo to see their score tables and their score boards in action. Probably one of the best purchases I ever made was our Sideline Interactive indoor score table. Go to sidelineinteractive.com. Check out their great products today. We also want to say thanks to our friends at Gipper. You know, your student athletes are on social media, and if they're not seeing content that you've created to celebrate their accomplishments and also promote your own program, you're missing out on a great opportunity. Go to Gipper.com. Their team will have you creating world-class content in seconds, and it's so easy, even I can do it. The website is Gipper.com. Check them out today. We'd like to say thanks to our friends at Huddle. As a football coach, I used Huddle for years, but when I became an athletic director, I made sure that our school was a Huddle school, and our coaches just loved the tools that Huddle provided. Our kids loved the videos, and our parents loved the streaming, but there's so much more. Go to huddle.com, join the 8 million users. Turn your school into a Huddle school. We'd like to thank the Ohio University Online Masters in Athletic Administration. Now, I didn't get my master's from Ohio University, but my assistant athletic director did, and it was a great experience. It's a very affordable program, just 20 months, totally online. And while you're earning your master's degree, Ohio University throws in 11 NIAAA leadership training courses at no extra charge. To get more information or to sign up, go to ohio.edu/info/MAA, the Ohio University Online Masters in Athletic Administration. We'd like to thank Home Campus for their support. Home Campus is a platform that you're going to use every single day. Things like scheduling, rosters, results, communication. How about student athlete eligibility and clearance? Who doesn't do that every day? Well, Home Campus does all of these things and more. It does them better and it does them faster. And to get started, just go to homecampus.com. That's it, homecampus.com. We'd like to thank Vital Signs Wall of Fame for their support. If you're looking for a really cool way to display your school record boards for all the teams, for all the events, or show off your school's Hall of Fame, go to Vital Signs Wall of Fame and take a look at their interactive touchscreen video consoles. It's also a great way to share your school's unique history and brag about your proudest moments. The website is vitalsignswalloffame.com. We want to thank Hometown Ticketing for their support. Hometown is the leading digital ticketing provider to schools and colleges. I don't think I need to say anything more. Go to hometownticketing.com. It's digital ticketing that offers more. And we'd like to thank Athletic Surveys by LifeTrack. You know, athletic directors already get feedback, but a lot of times it's from a very small group that just wants to complain. Athletic Surveys will connect you to that group, but they're also going to connect you to the 98% of your stakeholders that support your program. And having that data in your hands is incredibly valuable, especially when you're visiting with a frustrated parent or maybe your principal or even your school board. Go to athleticsurveys.com. They're going to create a custom survey that lets you take the pulse of everyone in your program. That's athleticsurveys.com. Welcome back, everyone, to another segment of Super Tuesday on the Educational 80 podcast. We've got a good friend with us. Nathan Whitaker is back for his fourth go round on Super Tuesday. If you're new to this segment, we have a team of 10 professionals. Some are coaches, some are athletic directors. All of them have a very strong connection with athletics. And Nathan certainly fits into that group. Just a little bit about him. He was a very successful high school and college athlete, worked in the National Football League for a couple of franchises, was part of a Super Bowl winning leadership team with the Tampa Bay Bucks. Is also a very successful author. He's partnered with Tony Dungy on a number of very cool books that you should add to your library. We'll talk about that later on. New York Times #1 best-selling author. He's a national speaker and presenter, and we're very excited to have Nathan Whitaker back with us on Super Tuesday. Nathan, thanks for coming.
Absolutely, Jake. Glad to be back. And thanks for the shout out for my books. As I often tell people, as long as you buy them, I don't really care if you read them. Tony, of course, would never. Tony, don't play that one for Tony. He actually, he thinks, if we're going to take the time to do it and to lay out some of his thoughts, that maybe it is worth. And I do think he's got some nuggets of wisdom in there for folks. So anyway, it's great to be with you.
Well, you and I were talking off camera. Athletic directors and coaches make up our core listeners. Every time you come on, you've always got some great observations. What are you going to share with us today on Super Tuesday?
I'm going to talk a little bit about relationships and how critical those are, and how at times they can be unwieldy or not work as well as we'd like, or be somewhat painful, but they're still necessary if we're going to be effective leaders.
Again, it's one of the most frequently mentioned tools, if you will, in all of our in our toolbox interviews. What's your take on the importance of relationships in a successful program?
Yeah, so I think it's probably obvious at some level how important they are, but I'm going to come at it from a slightly different angle, at least sharing a couple of stories I heard 2 weeks ago. I had a chance to hear Lamont Paris. He's now the head coach of the University of South Carolina men's basketball team. He's been there for a year. They had tremendous success last year, won more games than they'd won in a long time. And he talked about roster construction and trying to put together pieces in this era of the transfer portal and high school recruits and all that. And one of the things he came back to was that he never actually used the word pieces. Of course, he was talking about players and people. And he was talking about the importance of relationships. And he had a great example that last year he had a player named Meechie Johnson. And Meechie was the top scorer at South Carolina last year, finished his eligibility, and then decided to go for this year as a grad transfer back to Ohio State. I believe he had started his career possibly at Ohio State, transferred to South Carolina and was there when Lamont arrived, and now is going back to Ohio State. And Lamont got a text a couple of weeks ago from Meechie's uncle. And he had been watching TV and there was an interview on, and it showed a press conference or something. And it was Meechie next to Lamont, and the uncle snapped a photo and just said, man, these have been such good times to see you guys together. And Lamont got that text and smiled. And somebody who was with him said, oh man, doesn't that annoy you, or doesn't that frustrate you, or whatever? And he said, why would that frustrate me? That somebody's uncle thinks it's really cool that this player and I spent this time together and did these things. And he said, look, here's the reality, is that someday, 1 year, 5 years, 10 years, Meechie Johnson's going to get married. And I promise you, I'm going to get invited to that wedding, whether he played for me as his final stop at South Carolina or at Ohio State or whatever. And he said, because what matters to me is Meechie and his life and what he goes on to do and the person he is and how he lives. And he said, so the fact that he decided to do it at Ohio State and leave us here at South Carolina is a decision he needed to make. And so for me, the relationship is what matters, not what he's giving to me or doing for me, or that he left me in a lurch or whatever. He said, I don't look at that at all. He also made the point, he said, let your commitments be your commitments. And he was talking about it from the standpoint of recruiting, but he said, sometimes we sign a kid and then all of a sudden somebody comes to us in the portal, or all of a sudden that kid's struggling or whatever. And he said, I've talked to them all along about come to South Carolina and you're going to do X, Y, and Z. And he said, hey, there may come a time over some period of time when they're not willing to put in the effort. They're not willing to be a part of the program. They're not willing, whatever it may be. And we're going to try over and over. He said, but if I just sit there and I'm always looking for the flavor of the month or something, and I've spent all this time recruiting this kid, and all of a sudden somebody comes along and I'm like, maybe that person should be our starting center. They might be a little better. He said, I need to let my commitments be my commitments, and I need to stick with those and let those play out and let that kind of figure. And I think that's important from a leadership standpoint as well. When we're talking to people, when we're saying, hey, look, here's what I envision for you, for our organization, for whatever, are we willing to stick that out? There are times when we may need to change. There are times when we may need to look at the landscape and what people are doing, or something's changed. And are there times that we need to, okay, we need to adjust our sails here? Or are we just changing and we're just leaving people going, wait, I followed you here for a reason. And now we're not even heading the direction I thought you said we were going to head. And if you're going to do that, then at least you need to have some conversations. So the final point I'll make about Lamont, I took 7 pages of notes sitting there listening to him. It was one of those things. It was just, he was going too fast, with so many pearls of wisdom. And, of course, living here in Gainesville, Florida, I've been kind of keeping it quiet, but I'm now a South Carolina basketball fan. So anyway, he had so much to offer. But one of the other things he talked about was a speaker. There was kind of an old school speaker who was on a couple before Lamont, and he was talking about, kids these days want to be coddled and coaches want to be coddled. And I need to tell them, if you're not playing well, you're not playing well. I'm not going to sugarcoat it. And Lamont was trying to be very circumspect and figure out the way he wanted to say this. But he basically said, look, yes, I can be honest with people, but that doesn't mean I have to coddle them. And I can build a relationship. And that doesn't mean I have to sugarcoat what I'm saying. He said, but at the end of the day, I do think my players, my assistant coaches, my AD, people, I think there's some level at which they need to like me. And I don't need to change who I am. And I don't need to try to coddle them or whatever. But he said, it's human nature. He said, how many people do you know? And you just completely can't stand them, despise them, don't want to ever be around them, but you trust them. He said, almost none, because it's not human nature, right? He said, if I create an environment where nobody likes me, nobody wants to be around me, they despise me, am I creating an environment of trust? And he's saying, I don't have to change who I am to try to get people to like me, but I have to at least be willing to invest something in this relationship and understand that we need to have some sort of relationship, because you really can't trust me to do what's best for you, to do what's best for the organization or whatever. If you think I'm just an awful person, what am I showing you along the way to make you think I'm an awful person? And then think that I can be an effective leader and build up this sense of trust and commitment to each other. So I thought those were really interesting. And I don't know exactly, I have this desire to be liked. And I know it's probably a flaw in me at times, because I really want to be liked. And if somebody just does it for whatever reason, it really bugs me, and I may have trouble sleeping, and I may spend too much time. Tony Dungy and I had, when our first book came out, the early readers were all people who loved Tony. So of course it's completely skewed, right? So we get these reviews. At one point on Amazon, there's like 469 5-star reviews and one-star review. And Jake, I probably skimmed through a handful of the 5 stars, and I kept going back to the 1 star, and I kept reading it over and over. And I kept going, what did I do wrong? What did I need to do different? And I have to fight that, right? And I have to fight that. And it's okay to want to be liked, and it's okay to want, but I think Lamont's point was, I'm going to be liked because I'm going to treat you appropriately, and I'm going to treat you fairly, and I'm going to treat you in a way that you should be treated. That's a way that I would want to be treated. It doesn't mean that I have to sit there and worry about and bend over backwards and why are you giving me a 1-star review and what can I do differently to make this better for you? But at the same point, understand that it's hard to build up a sense of trust if I'm doing things in a way that is undermining that with how I behave towards you and who I am. So I thought those are 3 fantastic nuggets, but they all tie back into this idea of relationships. And if I wasn't 55, and if I hadn't used up my my eligibility, and if I had any basketball ability, I'd probably be driving up to Columbia right now and trying to get him to let me into the gym.
All right. You probably saw me chuckling on the whole Amazon review thing. I don't know if I shared this with you before on, my first book, absolutely. I'm looking at those reviews and they're clicking away, not 400. I think to date, we might have 100 4 years later, but almost all of them, they're that 4 and 5 star review. Oh, great book, great resource, blah, blah, blah. And then I look down and here's this 1 star. What's going on? And of course, there's no details to it. It's just a 1 star review. And I'm going, you know, who did I piss off? And
Right.
I
Right.
guess it's human nature. But all right, here's my real question though.
Okay.
Um, the comment, let your commitments be your commitment. I think I understand that, but this is where it got my mind going. Um,
Hmm.
the young man ended up transferring, going to Ohio State. Okay, and again, I'm much older than you. I'm 67. Um, the whole transfer portal and leaving schools, and I know coaches do it too at the drop of a hat for another $1 million, but if they're committing to the school, let that be their commitment. So coach me around my struggle with that. Yeah, I mean, and of course, we want it to be a good fit for the kid academically and all of that stuff. Family, I get homesick. But walk me through that cranky old coach on his front porch. Let your commitment be your commitment.
Yeah, that's a whole side area. I really think that the NCAA with its unlimited transfers and the couple of different portal times during the year. I mean, I would love for me, having worked in the NFL, it just made so much more sense if you've got a collectively bargained agreement with a unionized force and you're able to say, okay, you're coming here for X amount of dollars and you've got 2 years you have to stay. And that may not be great and that may not be fair or whatever, but at least it makes sense. It makes it hard from the NCAA side to coach, to build a roster. But to your point, more specifically, I think Lamont would say, look, I'm not talking about his commitments. We can have that conversation if he wants to. I'm saying my commitment. And I'm looking in the mirror and I'm saying, look, I committed to, here's an example that came to mind. And I was thinking, how many times has an AD hired a coach and said, hey, I mean, usually you don't get hired. Usually George Seifert doesn't take over for Bill Walsh, right? Usually it's not, hey, we've won all these Super Bowls and we just need somebody to keep winning Super Bowls, right? Usually something is wrong, something we're not winning, the coach, whatever. There's been some issue with whatever it may be. And so we're bringing somebody to a situation. We're saying, look, we know this is going to take time. We know you're going to have to turn the ship. We know this is going to, and then all of a sudden you start to read press clippings or, hey, we're 0-6 or whatever it may be. And you start to get kind of jumpy. And I think Lamont's point would be, look, your commitment was, we know this is going to take a year to show any progress and 2 years to actually get to 500 and 3 years to whatever. And are we willing to live with that when people start to give us heat? Somebody, the principal's saying, hey, why is our basketball team still terrible? You said this guy was going to be great or this lady was going to be great. And you're like, oh, they are, but not today. Or the results aren't going to show today. And so I think that willingness to say, hey, we've made this commitment and we understand there's this path and I'm willing to stick with that, even as we get down the road and realize. So you asked a great question, but I'm going to flip it. And I think Lamont would say, I'm talking about my commitments and I'll let everybody else figure that out. And I'm still going to build those relationships.
All right. Well, that's a very good answer, and thank you for getting my head screwed on properly to hear that. And again, you've seen this, at the highest level possible. Tony Dungy, he's coaching our football team, and ownership. We got to get rid of this guy. He can't get us to the top. What does he do with his next team? Wins the Super
Right.
Bowl.
Right.
The old cliche, two kinds of coaches, those that are fired and those that are going to get
Those are
fired.
about to be. Right.
Um, it's just, it's like there's a certain Division I football program here in Florida that they were undefeated last year. They won every single game. Coach might have had something to do with that, and now
Right.
they're off to a rough start. Oh, that guy can't coach. We need to get rid of him. Uh,
Right.
it's
He
just
forgot. He clearly completely forgot how to coach in 8 months. Right.
yeah. So anyway, let's share a little bit, with our listeners, because again, one reason that I invited you to come on is you're a nationally recognized in-demand speaker and author. You've got a great perspective. Talk a little bit about your books and I guess this is my word, your partnership, if you will, with Tony Dungy. How did that all come about? And, what books would you maybe recommend for our listeners if they're new to the Nathan Whitaker, Tony Dungy series?
Well, thanks. Yes. So I'd worked for the Jacksonville Jaguars for 3 years. I'm an attorney by training. So I was in the scouting department doing contract negotiations, salary cap work, and the like. And so I was working for the Jaguars. Then I joined the Buccaneers for the 2001 season, which, as you mentioned, was Tony getting to the playoffs yet again, but us getting knocked out in the wild card round and the owners deciding to make a change. And so they brought in John Gruden. And so we did, sure enough, win the Super Bowl that next year. And then the following year, I had a chance to join the Chicago Bears as their assistant general manager. And the Bucs blocked me and said, "We have big plans." And then the following year fired me. So I'm not sure I ever figured out what those big plans were, but anyway, I was trying to figure out what to do. And part of the thing that I had learned was just being around Tony and seeing, and even that one year that was so stressful and so many challenges along the way. And everybody except Tony was really stressed and wrung out. And so I talked to Tony after I was fired, and sure enough, by then he had gone on to do great things with the Colts and build a culture and a franchise there that was making the playoffs every year. And so we ended up writing his memoir in 2007, Quiet Strength. And that went on to do so well that the publisher asked us to do another book, which was then the book Uncommon, a book of values. And then the next year we did The Mentor Leader. And so we've done, I think, 8 books now on a variety of topics. And the most recent was called The Soul of a Team, which talked about teamwork and team building. And I'm actually going to fly out to Los Angeles in 10 days to speak to a school district there on those principles and to talk about to talk to parents one day and then to talk to athletic directors and administrators another day about team building principles and some of the things that we outlined in those books. So it's been a fun run, and we've been doing a variety of things and a lot of speaking and opportunities that have come from all that. And it's been a great journey.
Well, we appreciate you taking some time out of your busy schedule to share with our listeners. Um, if beyond checking out the books, if they wanted to connect with you, talk more about even having you come to their school or their institution to present to their staff, their coaches, what's the best way they can find out more about Nathan Whitaker?
They can head to my website. That's probably the easiest way to connect. There's an email form. There's also my social media links, and you can contact me through any of those. It's www.nathanwhitaker.com. And through that, you can find me, and I'd love to hear from any or all of you.
Well, thanks again for sharing with us. Truly do appreciate it. All the best on your upcoming trips, and hopefully we can connect. Somewhere down the road. We're not too far away from each other.
No, sounds great. It's always a pleasure to be on. Thanks again for having me.
We want to say thanks to our listeners and remind you that we upload the Zoom recordings of all of our interviews to the Educational AD Podcast YouTube channel. We do this just about every day with our features, trying to share stories and best practices for athletic leaders. And we hope we catch you next time on the next episode of the Educational AD Podcast. Thanks again. And before we go, as always, we want to give a shout out to our great sponsors. Gipper, start creating world-class social media. That's Gipper.com. Huddle, as a football coach, I used Huddle. As an AD, we were a Huddle school. Go to Huddle.com. The Ohio University Online Masters, go to ohio.edu/info/MAA. Vital Signs Wall of Fame, check out their touchscreen consoles. That's vitalsignswalloffame.com. We'd like to thank Hometown Ticketing, the leading digital ticketing provider to schools and colleges. Go to hometownticketing.com. Snap Raise, hands down the best online fundraiser out there. That's snapraise.com. Athletic surveys by LifeTrack. At my school, we use surveys for everything. Try them, athleticsurveys.com. Sideline Interactive, indoor score tables and video boards at sidelineinteractive.com, and Home Campus, that's homecampus.com. Thanks again for listening. We'll see you next time on the Educational AD Podcast.